Switched on IT is proudly brought to you by Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West and Oz Hosting, Cloud Made Easy. Welcome to Switched on IT. I'm Barry. This is the show where we talk about everything IT. In this coronavirus and the lockdown, lots of businesses have been struggling with keeping either open at all or the ability to be able to sell their product because their stores are closed. Now, last week, we talked a little bit about building a website. Businesses are getting to the point now where they're realizing that having a website is really, really crucial. But a website without the ability to sell your product is like having a big poster up outside. So today, Doug and Ray are going to talk about how to build an e-commerce site where you can sell your product, and even if your physical store is closed for some reason, like lots are during this crisis, you can still sell your product because you have an effective e-commerce store. Now, Doug and Ray are with us today. I'm sure that they're online now. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi there.
G'day, Dave.
So, Ray, what are the steps that a business needs to take in order to ensure that they not only have an e-commerce site, but they have an e-commerce site that can actually be found by Google and by their customers?
Well, what we're going to talk about today, I think Doug and I are going to cover the functions of really thinking about how to approach the launch of an e-commerce site. Then we're going to talk about the different e-commerce platforms that we generally recommend to folks. Not that there aren't others out there, but we can talk about some of the important features that they should have so that your site can launch effectively and efficiently the first time. And then some tips for getting the site launched and found by Google and the other search engines, but also by customers generally. And so I think that'll pretty much be the agenda for today's meeting. So, Doug, where should businesses start when they're approaching the concept of an e-commerce store? Where do you think they should start generally or specifically?
Sure. I think there's a number of different scenarios that we could imagine when people are saying, okay, it's time for me to consider an e-commerce site. One is going to be, is this an existing business where you're just going to sell your services online, or it might be a completely new business. Then there's the consideration of branding and all the brand collateral that you might already have, which, you know, your trademarks, your images, your logos, pictures of inventory items, those kinds of things. And then there's also the security elements in terms of if it's physical product, is it really valuable? What is the sort of the payment mechanism? Do you have a returns capability? Those sorts of things. So I thought maybe we could just step through some of these kind of considerations and maybe start with, you know, what are the considerations if it's an existing business versus it's completely brand new. So, you know, I thought maybe Ray, let's address those particular factors.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, one of the first things that I always think about is that if it's an existing business, are we extending an existing brand? And if that's the case, is there going to be work that needs to be done on the existing brand? Like, is it going to be, you know, ABC, company store? And is that going to be now the brand for the e-commerce solution, as opposed to just keeping the current and existing brand and just plopping it onto the e-commerce store. It just depends upon the business. It's a very, something that needs to be considered from many different angles and thought about. And then, of course, if it's a brand new business, there needs to be a brand. That usually requires coming up with a new domain. Even with an existing business, there may be the need to register a new domain. Some businesses decide to do a subdomain, basically store.abccompany.com. And so then it becomes a subdomain of that particular business, even though it redirects to maybe a different tool. Maybe it's a different part of the website, but the goal is to extend the brand in a way that makes sense for the consumer, so that they're finding the e-commerce solution easily. So if it's a new brand, you might choose that kind of domain. If it's an I'm not sure what I just said, but if it's an existing brand, you would think, choosing a subdomain or a subdirectory for the e-commerce solution. If it's a brand new business or it's the first time you're going online, generally, you may choose to take an e-commerce name for the domain that's a little bit more expressive of the fact that it's a place where you can shop. So, for example, you might take a top level domain that is something like .store or .shop or something like that. I'm looking up now which TLDs are available for those. I think there's a top level domain for store, and there may be one for .shop. Yeah, there's both of those. So you could take abccompany.store and abccompany.shop. If you're brand new and nobody else has ever seen the business in that capacity, then that's perfectly doable. Whereas if you're an existing business with abc.com, then abccompany.com, then you might want to choose that domain for abccompany.shop.store, or make it abccompany.com /store or /shop, and that be where you install the e-commerce solution.
Yeah. And without getting too granular, I guess one of the questions is, if you were to use a subdomain, store.abc.com.au versus using a different domain being abc.store, are there any Google SEO getting found implications to either strategy? Is it better to have the subdomain or a separate domain entirely?
So there are actually three choices there, right? We would have the subdomain, we would have a separate domain, or we would have a subdirectory, right? The / after the TLD. Google generally likes having the site structured in subdirectories. So in those two cases, the best option would be a totally separate domain, because then you would have a different URL sending links back and forth between two separate domains, which would increase its search engine optimization on that level. If you're going to use the same domain, then a subdirectory would be better than the CNAME record. But that's a complication, because if you are using a different tool, say, for example, my main website is built with WordPress, but I'm going to use a different e-commerce platform completely, where it's it's fully hosted for me, and so on and so forth, like the tools we're going to be talking about shortly. I can't have a subdirectory where I have abccompany.com /store without doing a fairly clunky redirect or forward. You could do it, but it really wouldn't be as clean as it could be. So we would then use a CNAME record or a subdomain for that purpose. And in which case, the impact to the business's search engine optimization is minimal anyway, in that regard. So you really wouldn't be overly impacted by doing a store or a shop.abccompany.com. But in terms of best to worst, you'd still go separate domain, subdirectory, and then subdomain.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And then another consideration is the type. If the business has got physical inventory, are there any considerations here in terms of the initial setup? Because I guess one of the factors is, where is all the product? Do we have our hands on it? How do we ship it? And do we have, images of all the products? So there, what are you sort of typically seeing there when customers come to you and say, I need to set up an e-commerce site?
Yeah, very much depends upon the type of tool that you're using, and so we'll get to that shortly. But you have three different types of businesses really when it comes to e-commerce. You have those that are using turnkey solutions, so you are in essence reselling someone else's product. You're having it either white labeled or relabeled for purposes of putting your branding on it, and then they're going to be delivered on your behalf, all by this other business. And handled for you, in which case you don't handle inventory. You're just basically reselling that product and having the front end website for that product. You then have a product-based business where you hold inventory, you are handling all of those pieces, and you are then doing fulfillment yourself. You need to make sure that you have the ability to hold inventory, keep track of inventory, and then of course ship and deliver those items to clients, ship and or deliver those items to clients. And then you have drop shipping businesses, which is a little bit of a variation on a white label or reselling business, where in essence you might have one or many different sources of products, and when someone puts an order through your website, then they are of course getting the fulfillment done by many different parties, right? So a white label or a resale environment has just one source for all of your products with your names on it, whereas a drop shipping business may have many different products and many different brands underneath it that are being delivered ultimately. So those are considerations you need to take hold of before you ever choose a platform, because if you don't know what you're going to be selling and how you're going to be selling it, how you're going to be fulfilling those items, then you're not going to know how to negotiate the contracts with those folks, and then ultimately you're not going to choose the best platform for the business. And then you flip to the other side, Doug, and you have all of the issues of digital sales, that is digital products, things that you're selling in that are digital assets. And we're not going to talk really about services, like if you're going to deliver other kinds of services online, but specifically products where you're going to provide a PDF download of an ebook, or if you were going to provide some other kind of digital asset. Say if you were ordering something and I was going to then manifest a document or a report or that kind of thing for a client. That's a kind of physical asset, a digital asset, so to speak, that has kind of a skeuomorphic or a physical representation. Those types of things where you want to download a license or some kind of piece of something to your system, you need to know how to increment the usage of those items. And also, as you talked about at the top, there's a security element here, which is that if you purchase a PDF from a website, if it's not in some way, shape, or form secured, then I can just take that PDF and send it along to my next 5 friends, and they can send it along to their next 5 friends, and so on and so forth. And those are lost revenues. So you really should take to heart how you are going to deliver digital products and provide those in a way that people can't actually pirate them. That includes video, audio, and things like readable documents like PDFs. So you may choose a platform, none of the ones that we're talking about today, just because you may be concerned about piracy in that regard. And so you have to be sort of conscious and aware of the fact that there are people who are not good people out there, and who are willing to take something and steal it if they're able to. So just be mindful of that as you're approaching launching the e-commerce solution.
Sure. Okay, so that's some good considerations in there. Your branding, whether it's a new business or an existing business, what sort of collateral you already have in terms of your image library and so on, and the security aspect at the end there. Now, if we look forward and we say, okay, we've thought through all those implications, and now what we need to do is choose an e-commerce platform. There's quite a few platforms out there, but I guess we're just going to deal with the dominant ones. I'd say, in a broad sense, you have two choices. One is where the e-commerce platform, the content management system that you use to manage your e-commerce platform, and the hosting of the e-commerce platform is all provided by the one provider. And then the other option is where you might be choosing an e-commerce content management system, but you could host that anywhere you choose. And so I'd say maybe as a starting point, maybe let's consider the pros and cons of those two different approaches to finding a hosting solution for your e-commerce platform, or a platform solution for your e-commerce business.
Yeah, so I think that if you already have an existing business like a WordPress website or something like that, many people will think about WooCommerce first. WooCommerce, of course, is the largest e-commerce solution on the planet just because of the sheer install base. It's not for everyone though, but it is probably the most flexible and available. It's free to install. I mean, you can just install it immediately right now into your WordPress installation. I do not recommend that without planning, but you can do it. And it's a very like I said, it's a very flexible tool. It allows you to be able to extend upon the plugin itself. So you can extend upon WordPress WooCommerce, which gives it e-commerce functionality, but then you can extend WooCommerce's functionality with all kinds of permutations with additional extensions within the plugin. So it's like a plugin within a plugin that you can install, many of them that you can then extend its abilities. That does require pretty strong hosting. You can't run an e-commerce solution on, kind of a very low level shared hosting plan. You need to have effective, business level hosting, and you need to be prepared for the load that the server is going to have for being able to handle that. But from my perspective, if you put Magento website, which is another e-commerce content management system, up against WordPress and WooCommerce, I tend to find that I'm much more comfortable seeing clients use and adapt to changing environments with regard to e-commerce when it comes to WooCommerce. I just see the ability for them to be able to very quickly get a marketplace running, or very quickly start a membership site, or very quickly go and launch a virtual event registration page, all using WooCommerce, that if they were going to try and do that with Magento, they're not going to have that flexibility. And while Magento is very slick and a very nice platform, if you're not having it professionally produced by us, professional developers, you're really going to run into a lot of problems. And so I really tend to feel like those are the two kind of competitors in that market for the most part. And I tend to recommend WordPress with WooCommerce if you're going to self-host your e-commerce solution over Magento. Almost every time, unless they're building a really big site, like Amazon level type site.
Yeah, I think one of the key differences that has been fed back to me between WordPress, WooCommerce, and Magento is the functionality around freight rates and being able to quote different freight rates, including international shipping, and that Magento might be better or might have better plugins available to achieve that. Have you bumped into any consideration like that?
That may have been, WooCommerce of yesteryear, but today WooCommerce has the functionality to be able to do lots of different new pieces. I mean, they've been updating it very recently with some very sleek abilities. WooCommerce is going to have some levels of limitations just because they're building it for so many more websites than Magento. But the reality is that if there's something that can't be done, it's probably pretty easy to make WooCommerce do it today, that I think maybe in even just a couple years ago, it probably couldn't do. But they've put a lot of effort into it to make it comparable in terms of calculating shipping regions, taxes, and different kinds of payment types for WooCommerce.
Yeah. Okay. We're talking about Magento and WooCommerce. Oh, now one other consideration just with Magento is the purchase by Adobe of the Magento open source platform. Is there so presumably it's going to become reasonably expensive, certainly more expensive than it was, which was pretty close to free. What's your perception on where it's going to finish up cost-wise versus WooCommerce?
Magento has a community version. I'm not sure how long the community. I'm presuming the community version will stay where it's at. But in terms of Adobe wanting to make a profit on the e-commerce solution. That is, I'm presuming, their end game. They didn't buy it for, I think it was $1.6 billion they bought it for. So they didn't spend nearly $2 billion not to make money off of the platform. So they're gonna charge, a pretty rate. I'm presuming that's going to be medium-sized to enterprise-level businesses, and most people are likely going to use Magento in the community edition, that are going to be smaller businesses who are hiring professional developers who then can, know how to use the community edition and then provide support for it. So in that case, I don't really see a lot of difference in the cost for what Magento is currently and what Magento will be in the future. Maybe there are differences. I've not interacted enough in that world to really know that myself.
Right. Okay. And so that's the, I guess the versions of an e-commerce platform that one can build and choose their own hosting solution, if you like. And I certainly take on board what you say about having a robust hosting solution, probably a dedicated virtual private server where you can control the storage, the CPU cores and the RAM and basically the compute power of the server on which you're hosting your own e-commerce platform.
Doug and Ray, I think that we will take us to a break now, and when we come back, we'll talk perhaps about some of the other platforms. We'll go to a break now, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Hi, this is Sarah and Bron showing off our height safety at Hip Pocket Toowoomba.
Harnesses, roofers kits, anchor points, we have walls full. We can tag your gear too. Get the right gear for the right job.
At Hip Pocket, we rock it.
If you've lost your income or had a change of earning capacity through no fault of your own and are struggling with debt that you can no longer handle, you probably feel a bit like this ant. If the struggle is getting you down and you feel overwhelmed, there is an answer. Central Liaison has helped thousands of people break free of the debt struggle by handling their debt for them. Freeze all interest, stop the harassing calls from the bank and start enjoying life again. Call them today on 0409 344 070 for a confidential, obligation-free chat about how Central Liaison can help you take your life back. The number again, 0409 344 070. Call them now.
Is your computer driving you crazy? Is it slow or doing things you didn't expect? Well, having a computer crash or pick up a virus can be a complete nightmare for a business, so having someone local you can trust to get you up and running again is critical. The dedicated team of experts at Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West will put your mind at ease from the moment you walk through the door and will get your problem solved in no time with a 100% guarantee on their work. Laptops, tablets, PCs, whatever you have, Roger and the team can fix it for you. So visit them today at 236 Bridge Street, Newtown. Can't get in to see them? No worries. Just call them on 4642 1331 and they'll come to you. Toowoomba Troubleshooters Toowoomba West on the web at www.computertroubleshooters.com.au/Toowoomba West.
Looking for exposure for your next event or function? Take your next community event, training seminar, sports event, official opening, function, concert or exhibition live to the world with PTV Channel O and Power FM's unique live simulcast. We can turn your next local event into a worldwide sensation for a fraction of what you would expect to pay. No matter what the event, PTV Channel O and Power FM can take your message to our audience. Invite the world to your party by phoning 0431 390 920 or email feedback@ptvchannelo.com.
Ray, that's a great sort of summary of the platforms that you would self-host or obviously arrange professional hosting services for. And then we've got the other variant where the hosting is all done for you. So you go to the business where they say, here's the content management system to manage your e-commerce platform, and it's all hosted by us. So, and the prime examples of that would be Shopify and Squarespace, but I was wondering if you might just take us through the other variants that are out there and what your perspective is on the reasons why you would choose them and why you might actually give them a miss and go for something like Magento and WooCommerce.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had this conversation with a client today, which is that there's Shopify, BigCommerce, and then of course there are the CMS solutions, the content management solutions that are hosted for you, like Squarespace and Wix, that provide you kind of a version of e-commerce for you to be able to use out there. And so the real criteria is how big do you anticipate the store being is kind of one criterion that should always be considered when you are trying to launch an e-commerce store. If you're dealing with a very small inventory, just a couple of products, maybe up to 25 or 50 products, it's not going to be really a problem for you to use your existing Squarespace or existing Wix account to be able to do that. And you're going to be probably fine if you have one product, not very many choices, and you're just delivering directly by you to those customers by shipping them or local delivery. Once you get beyond those abilities, then you're going to run up against some problems with using a solution that wasn't built for e-commerce. So the platforms keep building new infrastructure and new capabilities and so on and so forth. And those are all really great and welcome features. But if you're running really a serious e-commerce solution, then you really need to, e-commerce business, you really want to be focusing on using a tool that is built for it. And that's where Shopify or something like BigCommerce then comes along. And what I've learned before we got started recording is that there is an Australian e-commerce solution I hadn't heard of before. And I believe you, Barry, have had some experience with that.
Yes, that's right. The solution that I was using, because it's Australian-based and has good Australian support right here, is Neto, N-E-T-O. And it functions pretty much like BigCommerce. I've actually used BigCommerce as well. But some of the features of the BigCommerce site, like the support, from an Australian perspective, are a bit clunky. So Neto has a much better, and of course the other thing is that when you're paying for your e-commerce site, if you're using something like BigCommerce, you're paying in US dollars, so it's more expensive in Australia, whereas because Neto is an Australian-based company, you're actually paying directly in Australian dollars, so you know what you're paying for up front.
Yeah, that's a good consideration to take to heart when you're thinking about the dollars and cents of profit margin when it comes to some, especially when you're dealing with thin margins in drop selling, drop shipping businesses, or in a reseller environment where you have slim margins. Even in some physical product businesses, you're going to have low markup, and so you got to be careful about those things. And so then, of course, your e-commerce solution should be able to take payments in many different varieties, whereas maybe Squarespace and Wix are going to be able to take payments in, several different types of credit cards and maybe a couple different payment types. You're going to have Shopify and other tools that are going to allow people to pay in, say, Amazon Pay or Google Pay and Apple Pay. I really highly recommend anybody serious about e-commerce to make sure that their solutions allow for these kinds of things. Because if I have money in my Amazon Pay, in my Amazon account, and I'm capable of using that on your website because you have Amazon Pay enabled, well, that's just easier for me to make the payment, right? If you give me the ability to pay through PayPal, then I'm going to be able to more easily use the PayPal balance I have in my PayPal account. If you allow me to use Google Pay or Apple Pay, now all I have to do is open up the item, press the Google Pay button, touch my finger to the fingerprint sensor, or using Face ID to be able to have it confirm my identification, and then the payment goes through and it handles all of that seamlessly for me. And so since a lot of e-commerce is now happening on a mobile device, you really want to be able to make it easy for people to get through that payment transaction. You also want to make sure that the platform is going to be able to not only calculate taxes correctly, but also handle remittances, remittances to the various taxing authorities for you if you don't have the infrastructure to be able to handle that stuff. It's easy if you're getting just a couple of orders a month. But once you're getting hundreds or maybe thousands of orders a month on your e-commerce store, it's going to become that much more difficult for you to manage all of the tax remittances that are necessary. Certainly here in the States, I don't know about in Australia, but we have to remit to individual states, and there are 50 states plus individual territories. So we have to remit to all of those, and that can be quite cumbersome for the business owner, onerous in terms of a management perspective. Any other considerations, Doug, that you kind of consider?
Yeah, I guess looking at these hosted platforms where it's an all-in-one, it's the complete do-it-for-me system. I imagine that a lot of those considerations they've got a reasonably sophisticated solution for in terms of the payment options and handling currencies and shipping options and freight calculations and so on. Are there any sort of limitations to them that would sort of in a way force somebody who has been using a platform like that to look further afield and say, no, I want to have something where I've got more control, for example? What are the sort of considerations or factors that you've seen that might sort of send people in that direction?
Well, I'm probably a good example. I have a WordPress installation that's very beefed up. I have a digital, I have a digital course platform on my installation. I have a membership, platform on my installation, and I'm running everything in that space. So all of my users are already there with all of their, various parts of their existence inside of that database. And so for me to take people away from that to go make additional purchases would just be a hard turn, and potentially a hard turn off for the consumer. So in those cases, I just really don't want to make the effort to set up on a different platform to then try and redirect people back and forth between two different places. Since everybody can already do everything, do many different things in this one place, why would I choose to put myself out there, even if it's probably a good experience for them on the e-commerce side? It's still too much of a change for them to go from having everything else be collected under a single domain than to have to log into a different place and manage their purchases in a different place. So that ends up being one of the key factors that I see a lot of clients having the problem with, is that they have a membership site, but now they want to add on products that they can sell. Well, to decouple that and make people have to purchase in two different places is too much of a burden for them and too much of a burden for the consumer. The other side is that, say you have the e-commerce store set up and now you want to add a membership website, or you want to add a learning management system and sell digital courses, or you want to add a blog, or you want to add a podcast. Many platforms like Shopify, you can add a blog, you can add a podcast. Is it going to be the best platform for that? Probably not. I would always recommend using a tool that is built for podcasting and that has all the pieces in place for that. And again, WordPress has plugins that allow you to create a podcast directly on the site, and you can host your media through many different podcast services. But PowerPress plugin, the plugin that I use for podcast websites, is a WordPress plugin, and it's phenomenal. And why would you, sacrifice in that way when you've already got everything, available to you there? So those are those kinds of things where, I probably am a little bit not the average person, because I'm a little bit techier than most people. Okay, maybe I'm a geek, so I'm not going to be the ideal or the average person. But I think that once a business owner recognizes having all of their functionality and everything else seamlessly integrated in one platform, that you can continue to keep expanding. Which is why I always ask businesses. The first thing I ask is, where do you see the business going? What's the future of the business? And if they can tell me very clearly, listen, all I'm going to do is sell these lotions for the next 10 years, and then I'm exiting and I'm done, then I have confidence in saying, you know what, you can use something very simple and something very easy, and don't get too complicated with building out a WooCommerce site and doing all of the work that's necessary to get it up and running. But the moment I start to hear inclination that they want to hold, maybe have multiple physical retail locations on top of having an e-commerce solution where delivery happens in those multiple locations, and maybe they want to have a membership site. Maybe they want to sell digital products that have a little bit more sophisticated media management, like audio and video. That's when I start to think you're not going to be able to do that in any of the built for you, kind of plug and play tools. You're going to have to build that site yourself, and then I start thinking of other solutions, and not that Shopify or BigCommerce or Squarespace or Wix are the only of those. There are many other very, very customized or customized solutions for doing those things. So if you're going to, I don't want to think everybody should just choose only among those or WordPress and WooCommerce. There are many other platforms out there, but then you need to start doing your research in whether or not a specific platform is right for you because of industry. There are real estate specific e-commerce solutions. There are manufacturing specific e-commerce solutions. So depending upon your industry and where you're really going, then you really want to then make the right decision as to the platform you're going to choose.
See the sunrise. Crazy Kevin on the radio.
powerfmradio.com.au.
Oz Hosting is proud to support Switched On IT in bringing practical help to Australian businesses. We're talking to literally hundreds of businesses every day about their IT services, how to make them more efficient, how to make their businesses more efficient, and how to protect their valuable data. If you'd like your IT services securely hosted right here in Australia and expertly managed, talk to Oz Hosting. Catch the TRL Footy Show every week on PTV Channel O for an in-depth analysis of the previous week's games, plus a full preview of the upcoming round. Join our team of experts every Friday at 7 p.m. and again before the TRL Game of the Week, live on Saturday from 5 p.m. The TRL Footy Show is brought to you by Power FM and Hutchie's Builders, only on
And having chosen the platform and we've got our website up and running, what are the tips that we should be giving our listeners and our viewers in terms of ongoing management of their e-commerce site? In terms of the search engine optimization, should they use a content distribution network, a CDN, the use of blogs and other things just to improve the effectiveness of their business model?
Yeah, so I'll say there's probably 3 or 4 things that I can think of right off the bat. One is that before you launch your site, you need to test that thing. You need to battle test it and battle test it and battle test it until you know that checkout works properly and that the various features, if you've got upsells, if you've got interstitials that are happening on the site, you need to make sure that those functions work before you go live. So if you're using any solution, it doesn't matter whether it's Shopify or WooCommerce or otherwise, you need to test to make sure that the way in which you set up the site is the way that you intended it to. Because if you set it up wrong, then it will be the types of emails I get from clients who, they come to me and they say, I had this, website set up. It went live yesterday, and now I've sold, 100 products with, big promotion happening, and the wrong price was charged. So now I'm going to lose money on all of everything that I'm going to sell that I just sold today on my first day. And those kinds of things are not unique. They are not uncommon. And so I just try to impress upon everybody all the time. Make sure it's set up correctly the first time, because you do not want your big launch to basically be the day you're going out of business. It's a real tough thing to swallow when those types of things happen, and they do happen. So test. Second is think about the search engine optimization that you're doing is for not just Google, Google Universal Search, or think of Bing or any of the other major search engines. What we're really thinking of is getting ourselves into the product search feeds of product search results, which are usually Google Shopping and the spattering of Bing Shopping and other types of places where they are a little bit different than your average Google search. So when I'm typing in searches for a product, I'm going to be typing in not just the product, but also potentially something that modifies that product. So for example, I'm not just going to type in shoes. I'm probably going to type in men's shoes or black men's dress shoes. And so your products and the way in which you set them up inside of the inventory in your e-commerce solution needs to represent those keywords that people are typing in. So we need to make sure that we're optimizing both imagery. They need to be well lit, right? You want to have light, coming in on all sides of the product. You want it to be against either a white background or a transparent background, so that you can place that product on any background and it looks good. Think about how you would walk into a retail store, and a product that's well lit on the shelf is going to look much more appealing to you than a product that's stuffed in a dark corner underneath some dusty window. You want that product to look good, and you want it to be displayed well on the site. And good lit photographs are the types of ways that we do that kind of display, retail display, in an e-commerce solution. So make sure you have good photos, multiple angles, well lit, and show me the product in the hands of the person you want to buy. So many times I see just a product kind of like thud. They just took a picture of it and it's just laying there very inert. But what I would really love to see is that if you're selling something that someone your target audience is supposed to be using, show me that person using that product. Spend a little bit of money, put the investment in to make sure that you've got an effective photograph of the person who can look into the eyes of the camera and smile, or whatever their emotion is supposed to be with your product, and show that through the e-commerce solution. That's going to increase sales, and it's going to make it a much better retail experience for the buyer. And then you're going to, of course, have the language, the keywords on that inventory, that product page, to be keyword indexed. And then I'll note also that you really want to make sure that you are in the Google product feed. That is, you're in the Google Merchant Center, so that when someone does a search, they can actually find your products. This is a specialized product feed that you get from your e-commerce solution that is like an RSS feed, if you know what that is for a blog or a podcast. And you feed this specialized data into Google, and then Google knows how many products you have in inventory, where are they located if you have a retail location, different metadata associated with color, other options associated with that product, sizes, and so on and so forth, if they're clothing or other kinds of products that have sizes. So all of those pieces of data for your product get fed into Google, and then when someone does a search, they can now find that through Google Shopping. So you want to make sure you have yourself set up in the Google Merchant Center for that. It's free to put yourself in there, and it makes a real difference in making sure that you are found by Google and the other search engines.
That is a good tip. I think we've covered some really important ground here in getting going with e-commerce. I think we've talked about the starting scenarios, whether you've got an existing business, whether it's a new business, if it's existing, whether you've got inventory or digital products, the security considerations, the different e-commerce platforms that you can choose, and then we've covered off some interesting, I guess, tips and suggestions to make sure that having created your e-commerce platform, you're really optimizing the sales from it. Barry, have you got any other considerations or factors you'd like us to delve into today?
Yes, thanks, Doug. A couple of things, not one of them is a comment, the other one is a question. The first thing is when I was working with clients building online stores, one of the things that I used to remind them is that when you are writing descriptions for products, you need to remember that you are not just writing for Google. You're writing for two audiences. You're writing for Google, so you need to have all the keywords and everything in your description. But your description is also your sales point. So you need to write your description so that when somebody's reading it, it's like they've got a salesman in front of them saying to them, this is a terrific product, you need this, this is what it's going to do for you, and so on. So it's your sales pitch as well as your Google finding pitch. Now that's
and
one
many
thing.
times what I try to say to folks is that, remember that if your solution allows for video, you should use that video to be the salesperson in the product page. And you're absolutely right. A product page text needs to be both well optimized for keywords, but they also need to be human readable and persuasive.
Yeah. Now the other thing that I wanted to ask is today, at least in Australia, there's quite a large shift from credit-based purchases to afterpay purchases. Doug, do you know anything about the ability of some of these sites to deal with payment systems like afterpay?
Short answer is no, I don't. But I would imagine, I certainly see a lot of afterpay signs in shop windows, just on the classic high street shopping centre walk. In terms of how well they're set up for e-commerce, I couldn't say at this stage.
Okay. If there's anybody out there watching this that knows something about the use of Afterpay in e-commerce, please write to us, send us an email or give us a call and let us know, and we'll pass that information on to the viewing audience. Doug and Ray, this again has been a really important session because businesses, particularly during this pandemic, more and more need to be online, and they need to be online with solutions that are actually going to help them stay in business. So thank you for your time today. We will see you again next week.
Thanks, Barry.
Take care.
Well, there you have it. There's the solutions that are being suggested for your e-commerce store. Don't forget that if you missed last week's show, which was the show on general website construction, you can always go back and have a look on our video on demand section. This show will be on video on demand, so that if there was anything you missed in today's show, you can pick it up as well. And of course, every show is on video on demand. In addition, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, things that you would like to add, or something that maybe you would like to see on this show, be in touch with us either through our contact page on the website or send us an email to feedback@ptvchannelo.com, and we'll get our expert panel to look at them for you. This is Barry. You've been watching Switched on IT. We'll see you again next week.